right, it's me, Ashley Keller Williams Real Estate. Okay, we're continuing Backyard Revolution. We're on chapter 6. So he goes into, in this chapter, basically the ways people might use an ADU, okay? And if you're watching this, you might be thinking about, hey, how can I use an ADU? And you might already have some ideas in your mind. You might be thinking, hey, I want to use it as a long-term rental. I want to get an ADU because we're going to consolidate our families, right? Like, I'm going to bring mom, dad, or whoever, and they're going to live in the ADU and we're going to live in the main house, or vice versa. It could be, you need an office space, a studio space, right? Like, maybe there's like a business that you have and you want to put it into an ADU. All right. So he talks about the common ways that people use them. I'm not sure if I read anything in here. Oh, short-term rentals are really common. I'm not sure that I read anything in here that sort of said, oh, this is new or something that we haven't talked about. So, short-term rental, long-term rental, family, friends. Maybe you just have like an extra casita, if you will. So people come and visit. You have like a little vacation house people can stay in. Maybe, maybe you have business colleagues that come out all the time and you're like, hey, let's, we have a little house where people could have their own living space. I mean, there's a billion ways to use it. I was thinking like, even like, foreign exchange students. I mean, I think it completely runs the gamut. You could use it a whole bunch of different ways. He basically found, though, that when he did research in his area, so he's from Oregon, he found that primarily people were using them for long-term housing. Right? So renting it out, you have a tenant in there, the tenant's there for 12 months, okay? So that's how they're used. Short-term rentals are really common. He talks about Airbnb. I know in our area, and I think it's becoming more and more common, in order for you to do Airbnb, you have to follow some of the guidelines given by the city or whatever, your municipality or whatever. So you may be required to have a registered business. And you just follow the rules in your area, so this is not what this video is about. I don't know all the rules. I do know in our area, you are required to have a business license. So you would get that business license, you'd get registered, and you would do all the right stuff, right? You have the right insurance. Oh, and that's a whole other topic we haven't even really talked about. But please be aware that when you have long-term rentals or short-term rentals, or you have an attached ADU and you're renting out part of it, you got to have different insurance. So make sure you call your insurance agent. Okay. All right. So, I think that some of the ADU, it just really depends on your lifestyle, right? Because he's going to talk about like, oh, should I rent it out? Should you not rent it out? I mean, it really a little bit depends on like, what is your reason for getting the ADU? What is your reason for having the ADU? If you're just thinking, hey, I'm going to add this ADU because I think it's going to add value on my resale, then you're going to always be working to those numbers, right? You're going to think about, okay, let me get with my real estate professional. Let's find out what the comps are with an ADU and try to figure out like, okay, how much value does this add? And am I going to get the return? Okay, that's possible. If you're saying, hey, I want to supplement my income by having a long-term rental, then you're going to be working to those numbers, right? You're going to sit here and you're going to say, okay, this is how much it's going to cost me to build it. This is how long it's going to take me to pay it off, et cetera, right? So, I think really to take the approach that best fits your reason for adding an ADU. If your reason for adding an ADU is because, your family comes to visit you all the time and you want a place for them to stay that's separate from the main house because maybe your main house is small, who knows? That's probably priceless, right? I mean, you could go back and be like, okay, well, what does it cost for them to get a hotel? Like, let's do that math, blah, 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 blah. This would pay for itself in 5 years. I mean, whatever logical justification you need. But I think if your reason is the latter, like, hey, you have people that come in and visit, your family's from, England, and they're coming to visit and they need a place to stay. I think you're going to find that when you do the math, it's going to be priceless. There's no value that can be placed on that. Okay. He does go into like sort of like these things where he's talking about, ADUs provide a different kind of a more intimate relationship with the tenants, right? Because obviously the structure is going to be on your property, right? So if you're actually owner occupying either the ADU or the primary residence, you're going to be very close to that person, right? So, there is something to be said about, kind of like fostering a a deeper community connection and investment in the area, right? So it's nice, it's nice, it's nice to have neighbors close by, right? That's what your tenant would be. And, it really, I think, strengthens that community connection. Okay, which is critical, right? Like social connection is very important. I mean, it's the same reason why you might move a family member into your ADU, right? So higher social connection scores, more happiness, it's all better. Okay. One thing that he did mention, and I think, perhaps this might become more common. I think it seems obvious to me, but I haven't heard many people using it this way. But, if you have an adult child and you want to kind of like give them an opportunity to have kind of like a trial run apartment, right? Having them live in the ADU, they're close by. If they have a question about the house, it's kind of like perhaps like a transition for them, right? Like they could go live in the ADU, see what it's like to like own something, but you're there, so you're kind of there to guide, so I feel like that's also a possibility. And, I think a really reasonable use, especially given, the price of housing, right? The thing that we can do in my area is, there's a possibility to actually, kind of like condoize that, which means you could actually sell maybe the small house to that family member, right? So now they own some real estate, right? Have a little bit more responsibility. So, I think that that's important. And he goes into that, right? He talks about, because remember this book is, it's not that old, but it's kind of old, right? He starts talking about, using ADUs as condos and a legal mechanism by which homeownership can be passed on, right? So I think that perhaps will become more common, right? It's, because here's the thing, people are going to build these units, especially up here where we are in North Everett, where you have alley access and all that stuff. It's almost like you have a back house and a front house, right? And the owner of the whole entire tax parcel would have the option to, turn them into condos and allow somebody to perhaps purchase the back house, right? So, that's a possibility. And, that's pretty much it. I think to kind of like talk a little bit more about the ADUs as condos, basically what you would do is because you're condoizing it, you'd be creating basically like a homeowners association. Now, I think HOA kind of has it's kind of like a bad word, right? But here's the thing, when you're condoizing it, okay, and it's just you and the one house, you're the association. So it's like two people or two parties, okay? Two parties are the HOA. Maybe you could think about it more that way, right? Like, there are going to be some common elements. A lot of times the reason that you have to form the HOA is because you might have a common sewer line or a common water line, and those need maintenance. So, or maybe there's like a common driveway, like there could be. It just depends on, what the property looks like on the lot, okay? And how you decide to set it up. So, if your thinking is, okay, in the future, I want to condoize this, right? Like you're able to have that foresight, then you may build your ADU. Maybe you create it with it. Maybe you say, okay, look, I'm going to invest in the separate sewer line. I'm going to invest in a separate water line. And then, then basically now like the only common elements would be the tax parcel perhaps, because really let's see if I can say this. The only reason that you might have to really do that if everything is actually truly separated, like the electrical, the water, the sewer line, all that stuff, is because of the tax parcel, right? Like it could just be that in your area, they don't allow you to actually subdivide the lot, right? To actually split the lot into two tax parcels. So that might be the only reason, or the only thing that is considered a common element. And then what is your HOA about then, right? Like, maybe then you have no fees on your HOA. Right? It just all depends on what you and that other person decide. Maybe you guys get together and you have a conversation and decide, hey, we want to put funds aside to keep the exterior looking a certain way, or we want the landscaping to look a certain way. Well, hey, you know what? You guys can decide that together and make decisions for your association. And you and that other party then are the ones who are creating those rules, right? So it's nice. I think it's workable. Okay. And I think if you're thinking, hey, I want like a lot of autonomy, I don't want to have to like run decisions through somebody else, I don't want to have to rely on anybody else, then when you're building your ADU, build it so that you don't have to rely on them, right? Separate water line, separate sewer line, separate everything. Yeah. And, you know, it's a little bit of extra money, but who cares? Sell the place for a little bit more then, you know? You know, it's peace of mind. Like, I don't know, you know, what is that worth, right? What is the value of, you know, not having to get someone else's permission or, you know, have a long drawn out conversation with them? I don't know, you know, there's a value to that. So that concludes chapter 6. Okay. That concludes chapter 6. We're going to continue on into chapter 7. I'm excited. You know, I'm just obsessed with ADUs. Anytime I see, you know, you've seen me do this. Anytime I'm in a house or I'm holding an open house at a place where I can see some potential, I will show it to you. So please like, subscribe, and I'll see you on the next one. Take care.